Hello, friends. Welcome to today's reflection and meditation. And the topic is insignificance and magnificence. And at first I thought, well, maybe I should title it From Insignificance to Magnificence, or some way that I'm playing on the two words being in relationship. But then I realized the real point of this reflection is that we awaken to what is magnificent and we dissolve what we judge to be insignificant. And there's not a necessary bridge between the two, even though they play upon opposites. I looked up insignificant on etymology online, and it says, without meaning, answering to no purpose. That's actually really sad, isn't it? If something or someone is considered insignificant, without meaning and answering to no purpose. And then you get to magnificent, where there's lots more words. You get exalted, glorious, great in actions or deeds, elevated, noble, distinguished. So to make greatness, to do great things. So it's a stateliness, a grandeur, and it's an exclamation of observing that. And they seem to be opposites, because then you go back to insignificant, which feels so sad, and you get without meaning, answering to no purpose. Part of the interesting paradox in our awakening process is that as we grow in wholeness, I believe we discover that nothing is insignificant. No thought, no feeling, no word, no event. That everything has meaning, everything has value and significance. Everything has purpose. And at the same time that awakening happens and is discovered, we could say then there is something that is magnificent about life itself. Magnificent. Because it is great. But when we come into that magnificence on a spiritual level, there is an interesting quality that goes with this. And that is that it's free. So it's not the greatness like put up a statue. When we are moved by some great action or deed or person being acknowledged, when that hits a place within us, it's not because of the material that conquered the world. It's because it hits within us the innate magnificence of life. We all want to feel that our lives have purpose, right? I will need to look up who this is by. You probably know, I want to say Walt Whitman maybe, that we lead lives of quiet desperation. And I would say on some levels, humanity operates that way. That there's a certain built-in insignificance in the way we treat ourselves, in the way we treat many aspects of our life. And we then measure greatness by standards that aren't necessarily worthy of that measure. When we open ourselves to the awakening process, we taste in on the magnificence of every moment, and that dissolves insignificance. And it doesn't take the narrowing down on the insignificance to discover somehow magnificence somewhere in there. It is opening up to the magnificence so that the insignificance just falls away. And when I think about this topic, I think of someone beloved to me, and that is Therese of Lisieux. Now, when you look at her life, she died when she was 24 years old. She was a Carmelite nun. She entered when she was 15, and I can't believe I'm getting fuzzy on her details. She's been so close all my life, 15 or 16, I think 15. And you could look at her life and say that seems pretty insignificant. You know, she grew up in a very sheltered way in a home that was very religious. Her sisters all joined convents. Her mom died when she was little, which that's big. Her dad was a big supporter of all of them, and he ended up suffering mental illness later on in his life after she joined the monastery. One sister stayed behind to take care of him. And her life was the simplicity of monastic life. And I can tell you that monastic life at first glance is very simple. You get up at the same time every day. You rotate through the same kinds of prayers and feast days. You have a pretty steady schedule. And there's, from an outward glance, there's nothing really out of the box. Like, wow, that's great. But it was anything but insignificant and small. And I think that she gives witness to it so well because her stories are so grabbable. They are so relatable. All the stories of her life are truly ones that anybody can look at and say, oh yeah, that happened to me and that happened to me. And what she does is she goes into these stories in her life and she brings presence, and over again finds the magnificence in them. But not from a way she's grasping it, from a way that she's confident that it's there and it's just her job to find what it is and to open up to it. She is an incredible example of what I think is very juicy about this path. She said so eloquently that God, she had so many big desires. And here she joins a monastery and, you know, is limited in any of the abilities to do anything other than be the monastic. And in addition to it, she encounters her own littleness because she went through her own internal struggles. She was young. She was considered insignificant. She didn't even have a vote in the community. But she said to herself, God would not to inspire desires that were unrealizable. And therefore, she said, it's not a matter of if it's meant to be fulfilled. It's a matter of how is it going to be fulfilled. She positioned herself with undaunting confidence. And with that, then, it opened up a glimpse into how to discover the magnificence of our lives. I'm going to give a few examples from her life of how she discovered the magnificence. And it's interesting because I can't remember when it was, but I remember going to an art show. And I'm thinking it was before I entered the monastery and I was in my young 20s. But among the many art pieces, for some reason, this woman had, I think, 2 pieces. I think it was a woman and not a man. 2 pieces that she'd done of Therese. And what was interesting is that in these pieces, I remember one of them, and I might be getting it wrong, but the main point for telling you is the point I'm making, is there was some kind of like, she was within a box. You know, she was trapped within this box that was narrow and constrained and oppressive. It was oppressive. And I was being so blown open by Therese at the time, I couldn't relate to it all. And then when I reflect upon it years later, I thought, you know, if you look at anybody's life simply for its trappings, it will look narrowed and insignificant. But it is that very container of the life itself wherein magnificence is found. And this artist may have been playing with ideas, so I don't know where the artist thought about Therese, but the picture said to me it's just the opposite. Because every single little instance, and she never let an instant go by, as far as we have in her autobiography. She does not let something escape her. Every instance, she wanted to find presence there, and she would keep at it until she found it. And if you read her autobiography of a soul, third edition by John Clark, OCD, OCD is Order of Carmelites Discalced. It's not a ADHD, anything like that. Or it's not OCD, like obsessive compulsive disorder. You will find that throughout her writings, she keeps at it to find the magnificence. And then she has these lights that will happen frequently. She goes, ah, and then I knew. Ah, and then I knew. She shows us the real solid path of discovering the magnificence of our lives, I want to read a story. It's a clip from a story. She tells lots of stories like this, and that's why I think it's so brilliant. She says, another time I was working in the laundry, and the sister opposite, while washing handkerchiefs, repeatedly splashed me with dirty water. My first impulse was to draw back and wipe my face. To show the offender I should be glad if she would behave more quietly. But the next minute I thought, how foolish it was to refuse the treasures God offered me so generously. I refrained from betraying my annoyance. On the contrary, I made such efforts to welcome the shower of dirty water that at the end of half an hour, I had taken quite a fancy to this novel kind of aspersion. And I resolved to come as often as I could to the happy spot where such treasures were freely bestowed. She has story after story, and she challenges any way that you might judge you, your life, or anything in your life as insignificant. And she is, in a sense, to me, she is calling you to re-examine it. She's calling me to re-examine it. And then to come clean. Where do you miss the opportunity and judge something within yourself or outside of yourself to be significant? Where do you hold on to ideas of greatness that miss the greatness that you are? That's the big one. And this goes into the second quote by her. She gives such testimony to greatness. If a little flower could speak, it seems to me that it would tell us quite simply all that God has done for it, without hiding any of its gifts. It would not, under the pretext of humility, say that it was not pretty, or that it had not a sweet scent, that the sun had withered its petals, or the storm bruised its stem, if it knew that such were not the case. Therese came to such a place of freedom, and this would have been so contrary to her monastic practices, that she was free to celebrate the gifts of what she was and the gifts of others. She constantly points to the reality that humility is an obedience to the truth. So, our meditation practice is going to be a visualization and an energetic practice today. And we're simply going to set up a sacred container that celebrates the magnificence of anything that you might accidentally consider insignificant. And don't hold back. Any part of you, any part of your life, any part of your beliefs, any part of life at all. And if you draw a blank as we're doing this, place into this sacred container the many insects in the world and the grains of sand and the particles of dirt and the things that seem to be insignificant. We are going to build a magnificent fire of devotion, inviting in ourselves to be inspired by it and warmed by it. So I invite you to close your eyes. And there are 50 of us that are part of this series. So I would like for you to imagine, and even more than imagine, call forth in spirit, in soul, everyone that's part of this series, and probably you know very few of them. So just call them forward in spirit to sit in circle with you. And let this circle and where you sit be in a sacred way or a sacred place. It could be a sacred place where you are right now. It could be a sacred place in nature, in some holy place or temple or vortex. And I will give you a moment to set that in motion. And now allow in your mind's eye there to be a sacred fire in the center of this circle. It could be a fire that's surrounded by stones. It could actually be a sacred container that then has fire within it. Be very specific. Let it be magnificent and not insignificant. Notice the details of this sacred fire. And notice that the fire, while it may have a material, a 3D sense to it with the orangish bluish flames, there is also an energetic. See that the fire as well is translucent white and purple and indigo blue, emerald green, deep yellow, orange and deep red, and then it's all colors on the spectrum. And notice that the fire, that the energetics of the fire, the subtle energy, move way up into the sky. Maybe the material fire does so as well. Imagine what is easiest for you, but extends upward and loses itself in the sky. And now, each one of us in the circle, and all of us, we are each going to release into this fire anything within ourselves that we have treated as insignificant. Any thought, feeling, bodily state, belief, take your time, and release it into this fire. And as you do so, watch as the subtle energy takes it, transmutes it into magnificent energy, allows it to rise up as far as you can see until it becomes part of the blessing of the sky. Release, my friend. Now is this blessed time. Release all that you know. You can continue here, or you can move forward and release into this fire, this holy sacrifice. Anything in our systems that is judged as insignificant. For instance, those with less power, less say, those whose jobs do not command authority, false senses of power enforced by hierarchy. Every individual that has been the brunt of being treated insignificantly, known or unknown, release all into this sacred fire. Release into the fire all ways the animal kingdom has been treated with insignificance, or even ways that animals in particular have been treated insignificantly, including the full spectrum, and not just by human beings. The insect world, all living organisms like that. Release into this fire that celebrates their magnificence and allows there to be a shift in the consciousness as they become a blessing in the cosmos, that their magnificence is realized. And then everything having to do with plants and living organisms on this level, either treated by humans as insignificant or experience insignificance in any way, shape, or form. Ways we understand with our minds, ways that we do not understand. And lastly, as a way to open to the healing of collective trauma, we place within this fire of holy healing all words, actions, and gestures and beliefs of insignificance that have been in the past, that are in the present, that could be part of the future. All collective trauma, collective consciousness that reinforces erroneous ideas of insignificance. We release it all into this fire. And now we let ourselves be open to receiving the blessing that has moved upward into the space, the sky, and is blessing upon us. You can allow the energy of this to come down upon you like a gentle energy rain, or simply absorb you and the earth and creation in its blessing. this will continue beyond this meditation time. I invite you to bring your palms together in front of your heart, sealing this precious moment we have shared. And open your eyes with Namaste. Namaste.